much for coming to Startup Stir. If you're regular attendees, this is a new venue for us. We're a coalition. We moved away from another space, and we're going to bounce around a little bit this year to kind of sample out some different spaces in Boston and check out different office spaces. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Farhan and his team at Coalition for hosting us this evening. There's a contest. You want to talk about it, or you want me to talk?
Yeah, I can talk about it.
Okay, please do. Yeah, we're having a special contest tonight. You can win something. So,
It is not a date with me, so you don't have to get that excited. Well, first of all, obviously, thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Startup Stir, for choosing this venue, choosing Coalition to hold your awesome event tonight. Thanks to the audience. Thanks, guys, for coming and making it here in the Snowmageddon. So Coalition, we're a co-working space. It's a top quality space. We focus on collaboration. We basically have amazing, team rooms. We're almost full. We have a lot of natural sunlight. About half of our members are veteran co-founders. A good number of female co-founders. All of our members are about 100% revenue generating. So we focus on quality companies. And if you're interested, just talk to myself. Samia, you can show your face, is our community manager. Give it up for her because she's been working hard.
She really put this together, to be honest.
A little bit more about Coalition. We have 9 locations around the country, so it's an awesome large network. And I'll just introduce the raffle, which is if you guys tweet hashtag StartupStir and at Coalition Boston on Twitter, then we will select the best tweet and interpret that as you will, so we'll figure that one out. To win 3 free months of an open desk membership here at Coalition.
Valued at?
Valued at $350 a month. So
$1,050. $1,000 prize.
It's a good grant, it's a good $1,050. No tax. No tax added, so.
You're only $350 a month for a space?
Yeah, we're only $350 a month for an open desk membership. So, talk to us when you're happy, and onto the show. But thank you guys again for hosting us.
Thank you for having us.
Here. Yeah.
All right, so I realized on the front end I sort of failed to introduce myself. My name is Aaron Radez, and I'm the managing director of a company called Beacon Hill Partners. We develop, invest in, and create awesome consumer product brands. We're increasingly dipping our toe into SaaS applications, mobile, and honestly, when I want to know about something, I have the privilege of hosting Startup Stir because I created it. So I bring experts to the table, and I pick their brain for an hour. And we open the doors, we give them free booze, and they get to talking. So we have some great panelists here with us this evening. Oh, a couple more shout outs, by the way. Thank you very much, by the way, to Deep Eddy Vodka and Auto Pizzeria. They generously, in-kind, sponsor our event series and have done so for some time now. So, if you go home full and a little bit tipsy tonight, it's as a result of their efforts. So we have some great speakers this evening. Phuc Truong from Drizly.
How you guys doing? Thanks for making the time.
I'll let each of them introduce themselves, and we'll go down the line.
Okay. So I'm Phuc Truong. I head up monetization for Drizly. Drizly, if you guys don't know us, we're an on-demand alcohol delivery service. We're in 12 markets currently. We'll be in another probably 15, 16 markets by the end of the year, making 30 total markets across the U.S. as well as we'll be in Canada, Eastern and Western Canada as well this year. So.
I'm Sapir. I'm the founder of a company called Apptopia, and what we do is we sell data and intelligence on the mobile app market. So we think of ourselves as this big, massive spy tool that allows you to see how other people are doing, what they're doing, how many downloads they're getting, how they're getting them, how much money they're making, why are they making this money, how, etc. And I actually want to give a shout out to the 4th panelist that wasn't able to make it, I guess. David Bashalia, he's a good friend, and he's also a crazy motherfucker. I kind of wish he was here.
The Tap Lab is this company. It's a game foundry, yeah?
Yeah, it plays games. Never stop playing games. So, that's Greg.
Super. My name is Greg. I run a company called Raiz Labs. We're headquartered right here in Boston. We have an office in San Francisco as well. And we work with companies to build exceptional applications. So we've built a little over 100 applications, many well-known brands, many popular Boston startups. We help them figure out what works in mobile, what doesn't work in mobile, and make that great. We're actually in the process of launching a mobile incubator. So if you're starting a mobile company and interested in that, definitely come talk to me.
Cool, awesome. All right, so I have lots of questions about apps. I guess my question probably is first directed, and by the way, I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to ask some questions, I don't really leave anything off the table, like I really like to dig deep, and then I want to hear what you guys want to know about as well. So, Ellie, I feel like more than anyone has this 30,000-foot view of the app world, because you're like the master of the data behind all apps that are happening. What exactly does Apptopia, so people have asked me this, they're like, who's this Ellie guy? And I'm like, man, he knows, like, his finger's on the pulse of this shit. Like, what does
Apptopia to be disappointed, I don't want to.
No, and his company is backed by Mark Cuban, so I don't think he's investing in silly ideas. So what does Apptopia do, and what kind of data are you collecting, and how is this valuable to app developers or to people looking at monetization in the app marketplace?
Yeah, so Apptopia does a couple of things. We started off as a marketplace for mobile apps, so to kind of enable the acquisition of mobile apps, and that business has been growing. And as we started that marketplace, we realized there's a lot of value in the data that we're collecting. Because to actually utilize the marketplace, what you had to do is provide us with your credentials so that we can collect the data or synchronize your developer account, your App Store account, or your Google Play account, or your Amazon account, so that we can get data directly from the App Store. And that data actually became increasingly valuable, and people were asking us questions. And so we were like, hey, we're giving this information away for free. Why don't we start selling it? And so
who are your customers for that data on the back end then?
Yeah, so our customers, the data product has evolved. Our ideal customer today is a company that has an app that is spending money on advertising, spending roughly north of $10,000 a month on advertising. And when they're spending that amount of money, they need access to competitive intelligence. The App Store is extremely competitive. There's over 3,000 new apps being submitted for review every single week, across Google Play and the iOS App Store. And so, with that number of apps being submitted, it's just very, very difficult to compete. You could be burning a lot of money, $10,000 in Facebook ads. If you're thinking about submitting a mobile app, your $10,000 in Facebook ads does not buy you thousands of users. It barely buys you hundreds of users, right? And you're talking maybe 1,000, 2,000 installs, and maybe a couple hundred users. So $10,000 is nothing. And if you don't have access to our data, you're basically burning your money, because the only way to compete is to imitate the greatest players. They have data that you don't have. They have marketing campaigns that you don't even know how to produce.
What do you see the typical cost of user acquisition for an app download to be? And obviously it depends on the virality of the app. I mean, like,
it really varies. Depends on the category. Depends on the country.
All right, let's say Dave were here and he has an awesome new game that he's put out, and maybe he's monetizing it through some sort of in-app advertising, as well as like you can buy tokens or something to that effect, like a pay-to-play type of monetization. How much is it going to cost him to get a new user?
Yeah, so in the
not
games,
to completely put you on the
yeah,
spot.
no, I mean Dave is a little bit of a hacker, so people probably pay him to download his app, as far as I know. But I think that the average cost right now, it's probably about $1.75 a user, and you're talking like if it's incentivized, it's probably 45 cents an install. You get up to 75 cents an install, non-incentivized, sometimes more depending on the thing. I've seen people pay $3 an install, depending on the company, depending on the ad network. It just depends what you're optimizing for. If you're optimizing to play with their store rank, then you want to get as many installs as you can, and just game the ranking so you climb up in the ranks, and hopefully you get organic downloads. If you're not playing with the store rank and you're actually looking, you have like a formula that says, hey, I buy users for this much, they convert at a certain percentage, and I make this much money off each one of them, then maybe you're looking for higher quality users that cost significantly more money.
All right, so I feel like, Phuc, you know all about Drizly's cost of user acquisition, and you don't have to share that data because they may not want you to. But you know, broadly speaking, in a job like yours, what are you looking at in terms of the success of Drizly's advertising efforts? What kind of advertising is Drizly doing? And your method of monetization is very different than the typical app, where you're not. I mean, you're making money off of a service fee, not so much like in-app advertising or even a pay-to-download or other methods.
Right. So basically, we have our cost of acquisition range, and at the end of the day, we have a few metrics in terms of key performance indicators. One, we're looking at downloads, which to us it's no big deal. To your point, at the end of the day, the key metric for us are purchases. So if they are downloading the app, if they're registering, and then they're going so far as to make a purchase, i.e. getting their favorite wine, beer, or spirits in their door within under an hour.
Does everyone know what Drizly does and is? Anybody that doesn't, don't feel embarrassed. They had a big kind of boost here. Oh yeah, by the way, promo code StartupStir. If you download Drizly and you use that code, you get $5 off your first order. So. Free delivery. Well, delivery normally being, hey, I'm trying to really sell it for you, Carly. Like, $5 off your first order, which is not $5 off the cost of the alcohol, but Drizly has generously waived their $5 cut of the action. But I've used Drizly, and I'm not going to interrupt. You go ahead.
Sure. So,
I will interrupt again.
So we have our user metrics, where at the end of the day, the most important thing for us is our purchases. And then from there, we have it not down to a science, but we know that percentages, from a percentage standpoint, if you make your purchase within the first 14 days, then there is a X percent chance of you doing again, and then you being like a lifetime value customer. So that's one side of our business, which is certainly the consumer-facing side. But in terms of dealing with alcohol, because it's heavily regulated, and there's various archaic rules of engagement from a federal laws perspective.
Varying municipality to municipality as well?
State to state.
State to
state.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, there's this arcane system in the U.S. where it's called the three-tier system, where the brands, i.e. Absolute or Jameson or whatever, they could only sell to the wholesaler. The wholesaler could only sell to the end retailer. The retailer could only sell to the consumer. And so throughout that whole kind of ecosystem, you can't piggyback that out at all. So meaning that when you see a Heineken ad, it's pure branding. They cannot sell to the end consumer, right? They can't do it. It's going back to prohibition. So in comes Drizly, and this is the other side of our business where we've created this platform where within the legal framework, we can move alcohol. So if you access our API, if you're a brand, well, every brand has their app or have their website, right? But in terms of going there, you can only view videos, you can maybe register to be on their CRM list. Now what we're powering is the ability to have deliver now capability, all within the legal framework. So when you go to absolute.com, and if you want your elderberry vodka, then as long as they could pass us the information from a technological standpoint, because everything for us is localized.
Sure.
If you pass us the information to where that user is, we could route that request to their closest partner store, pull in the inventory of Absolute so they could buy it.
That third tier of
right.
professional in the supply chain, which is the end retailer.
Right.
When did Drizly start that? So I've kind of tracked Drizly for, I don't know, since you guys were putting flyers on cars in Back Bay like a couple of years ago. Maybe they're still doing that.
We're still doing that.
That was it.
When did you start this? I feel like, user acquisition at absolute.com is very different than user acquisition with a flyer in Back Bay.
So at the end of the day,
when did this start with the
it started
with the top down?
It started when I came on board, which is my main goal is to kind of.
Is this your idea?
When was that, by the way? When did you come on?
I'm not a co-founder of Drizly, but I kind of worked with them in the early spring on a consulting basis to figure out what is the monetization potential. Right,
so you're already you're no longer working at Drizly. You're working at Apptopia.
So again, I started in the spring to figure out what the brand story is and what the potential is, because of all these regulations, from an innovation standpoint, there hasn't been much of it because there's just too much regulation, right? It's a landmine. It's really hard to navigate. Every state has their own regulations in terms of what you can and cannot do. And so in comes Drizly, where they found the right model to get regulatory approval in each state to do the on-demand thing. And now we're kind of hacking the whole system where, well, if the brand can't legally sell, because our model is such where, you know, we're keeping the 3-tier system whole. If you access our API, which is a SaaS-based access for the brand or for a publisher, then you know, we're putting order volume through our pipes. We're bringing orders to our retailer, which at the end of the day is our primary revenue source. The retailers pay us based on incremental volumes that we spend, that we send their way. So not only they're paying us, the brands are paying us on the SaaS-based access, but then we're also getting it from the retailers because we're pumping more volume through.
Right.
So
you're kind of you're making money 3 ways on a Drizly order that comes from Absolute.com.
Yeah, so we're making money from Absolute because they're paying us for the SaaS access. They're paying us for the data access because they cannot get consumer data, and the retailers paying us based on the incremental. And then from a customer acquisition standpoint, that's just bringing down our
How do they pay you for
customer
the SaaS access? Is it an API usage or just
Yeah,
set fee?
API usage.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's like per transaction, basically. Like
Number of calls or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, they get an order, boom, they pay them.
Well, we don't even go that deep in terms of per transaction. It's just access to be able to sell because you cannot sell.
Right.
So they're paying a premium on that.
Are they paying hundreds of thousands a year or tens of thousands a year?
You want to know what he's worth when you hire him away.
So the right question is, it depends on how big the brand is.
Got it.
And how much they're
How stupid
resourcing.
they are and how they
I don't want to dominate the question or the conversation on just Drizly, but I mean there are a few key players in alcohol. Diageo, like there are a couple I feel like there's only like 3. I mean InBev, like how many? There's all these brands.
So
in
there's
alcohol,
probably like no more than 15 holding companies that own a lot of the brands. So Diageo owns Smirnoff. They own Johnny Walker. They own so many different brands, so many different type of categories.
Guinness, I believe.
They own Guinness, so they're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
So
or InBev or someone like that.
Yeah, AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch InBev. They own a lot of beer brands.
Right.
So massive business. I think that the alcohol business, just in the U.S. alone, is a $200 billion business. But it's controlled by no more than like 20 companies.
Right.
So.
All right. So.
List of families you want to marry into.
And we're dealing with a lot of the sons and daughters who.
Of the founders.
Yeah.
Or grandchildren.
Grandchildren, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So Greg, I don't want to leave you out of the conversation here. All right. So back in the day, a long time ago, I ran a web design firm. And we did web marketing consultancy, and it was a fee-for-service business, which I kind of feel like is the impression I get from Raiz Labs. We were never doing, I never had clients like your clients. Like we were never signing the the big contracts and really doing like long-term engagements. I was bottom feeding because I was 17 years old, and so it's picking up whoever was willing to cut a check. How does one engage Raiz Labs? How much of a budget do you need? Who's your ideal client? And what's your process behind developing an app for a brand?
Can I answer that part of that question? Unlimited budget. That's really the type of budget that you need. If there's a limit, you're not the right client.
So I started the company 12 years ago. Prior to that, I was working on Microsoft. And when it started Raiz Labs, I really had no idea what I was doing in terms of business and how to monetize, how to make money on software in general. And so I actually did, I sold software for my website. You could download applications that I would code at night. And as we got better at it, we really started to focus on user experience and user interface. And one of the kind of aha moments I had was that the things that separate good software from great software are a lot of the user experience elements. How do you make great software ends up being the design, the delivery, the subtlety of the application as opposed to the functionality. That if you go into the App Store and you're looking for a particular function, like I need a tip calculator, you'll find 1,000 tip calculators that are, because it's not a hard application to write for a developer. But there are apps that rise above the others, whether it's through visual design, through interface design, through some of the subtlety, through understanding of the user's problems and interactions. And I saw that when I was working at Microsoft on very large applications and operating systems, and I saw it in mobile applications as well. So we really, that was the foundation of the kind of the philosophy of how we would build products. To kind of answer your questions, and I have this discussion a lot with clients who are like, hey, how much does it cost to build an app? And the answer is really, well, how much does it cost to make a movie? And, well, you know, you can shoot a movie with your iPhone, and you can go in the backyard with your friends, and you can shoot a great movie. And the content of the movie and the quality of the movie is going to be dependent on the people, the script, the actors, the production value.
I like that analogy, by the way.
And you can shoot a Steven Spielberg blockbuster, and you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, for us, and it ranges. We have lots of Fortune 500 companies that we work with that will spend typically 6 figures and up building an application. So it's not unusual per platform to spend 200, 300, we have some clients that spend $1 million a year with us building applications. We also have lots of startups that come to us and say, like, how do we get started? And that's really why we're starting some of the startup incubation, is we want to be able to help a lot of companies who are trying to be successful in the App Store, and they haven't raised their A round, but they have a good idea and they have a good team.
So of your workflow at Raiz these days, is it all contracted work, or is Raiz building applications that you retain equity in, that you own 100% of?
Yeah, we believe in both, and so the company mission and vision is to shape the world through great software, and we look for opportunities to do that in a multitude of ways. So sometimes companies and well-established brands that are over 100 years old come to us and they say, we have this software problem, we want it solved. And that's really attractive because we don't have 100 years to figure out their brand and their company and become a Fortune 100 company, and they've spent hundreds of years doing that. And we think we can apply our technology and skills to build something truly extraordinary. And there are other instances where we're like, there's this tactical problem and we think that people have this and we want to build this. So we are incubating and building some of our own technology. We've actually spun off a company earlier last year called Appy, which was a competitor to TestFlight. And so we think that's something that we will repeat again, building technologies internally and then spinning them off into new companies.
Sure. So when you have a winner like that, your intention is to spin it off.
Depends on what it is.
So it doesn't distract from the core business that you're in.
I think
which is
certain things that we think could be core, certain things that we're particularly passionate about, we think we could build and incubate and grow internally, and certain things that we think are very different from the core business model that we currently have, we would spin out. So it is a little case by case.
Do you integrate Ellie's product with your apps, or is it per customer specs?
No, not yet. But after
not yet.
this event,
right.
there will be something going down.
How many apps? What percentage of apps in the App Store have your? I think at one point in time, you told me there's a snippet of code, and I kind of envisioned it like putting Google Analytics on my
snippet
website.
Of code. There's no snippet of code with Apptopia. 0 snippet of code.
Well, then I was.
This is a big thing. No SDKs, no snippets of code. No, so we provide value to developers, and for one reason or another, to extract that value, they need to share their data with us. And then in return, we share data with them. So we give them analytics for free. We give them, you have a question?
Yeah, which snippet of code is that?
A line of code. So there's a product called Google Analytics that's owned by Google that tells you how many people came to your website, where they came from, what countries, what language they speak, etc. And Google has a piece of JavaScript, I believe. We're getting a little out of my technical realm because I've been out of web design for 14 years. So, for 7 or 8 years. 14, 7 or 8.
Those are like dog years, man.
Thanks to Deep Eddy Vodka. So you have to, embed this code in your website in order to receive the rich data that Google is going to provide you. My understanding of Ellie's product was you had to embed this code in your app. I stand corrected.
You provide a login to your iTunes account. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you provide us a login to your Radez account. We don't store any of your passwords. We just synchronize your data. We have a very cool mechanism for doing that. So, I'll tell you a little bit how we get data because it's actually interesting. So we provide you a free analytics product that you can use to track the performance of your apps in one unified dashboard across many app stores. You can track the performance of your advertising or the performance of how your advertisements that are in your ad networks are performing all in one dashboard. Completely for free. If you do that, then we also allow you to pick up to 3 competitors of yours, so you can also track for free, and we show you estimates for their performance. So you can benchmark yourself against them, or you can see certain things that they're doing, how many downloads they're getting, how much revenue they're making, so you can say, okay, here's what I need to get to.
Open to anyone. If you're Drizly or you're in your mom's basement making an app,
Yep.
you can use the Apptopia
Absolutely open
product.
to anyone. We also offer our real product, our flagship product is our Insights product, and that allows you. It's a really cool spying tool to tell you, how many downloads your competitors are getting, and what countries are they getting them, how are they getting them, what percent are organic, what percent are paid, how much money are they making, how are they making that money, where is this revenue coming from, is it advertising? If it's advertising, we'll tell you which ad networks they're making this, if they're advertising their app, we'll actually show you the actual copy that they use to advertise. So if you're coming up with creative copy for your Tinder clone or your Tinder competitor, you can actually see what kind of ads Tinder is running. Or if you're running an incubator, you can find opportunities and find gaps where you can make money, in the market. So it's a very, very cool platform.
All right, so I kind of want to steer the question or the conversation a little bit broader in kind of the Boston app scene, and then I want to open it to questions from the audience. And I don't know a lot about apps, so I sort of started from a funding perspective. Follow the dollars, you'll figure out who's doing what. And I started to pull data on that, and I discovered that Massachusetts last year, and I apologize, I'm having to read, but I didn't memorize these prior to coming here, secured 9% of mobile deals in VC funding. Boston secured 19 total VC-funded deals, VC or PE deals last year for $123 million in funding. 4% of the funding, 9% of deals. So we're kind of doing underfunded, smaller deals here in Boston. I guess the question kind of centers on where is the broader app world in Boston? Is Boston a player in that world, or is it only California? New York had more app development last year than Boston did. Why aren't we there? How can we get there? Are we there and my stats are wrong?
A lot of people start here. I let Greg also take this question, but a lot of people start here, I think, and then they move elsewhere because the funding isn't here, right? So, and a lot of the investors here are not consumer investors. They don't understand the consumer market. They like B2B things. They like boring shit, and they're old, and they're like, you're better off getting the hell out of
offense,
here.
but like your product has flourished and stayed in Boston because it's a B2B product. Like you're
Yeah.
not a consumer
No, we're not
product.
a consumer product.
Right.
We see lots of innovation and incubation and lots of amazing companies in the Boston area. We have offices in San Francisco, so we see a lot of deals that happen there. I think it depends on what types of companies and what types of startups you're seeing. And I think there is regionality to the types of startups that tend to be more successful in the Boston, New England area. We see lots of things like TripAdvisor and Kayak and these types of companies, HubSpot, Care.com, hugely successful, Wayfair, doing well here, established companies.
All consumer-facing
all
brands as
consumer-facing
well.
brands and doing incredibly well in the App Store and with their mobile strategy. We see a lot of early-stage startups, some with traction, some without traction.
Would you put Drizly in that category?
I would absolutely
Yeah.
put Drizly, Runkeeper, Lose It. There's a number of other, both fitness, Uber competitors, things like that.
Well, what's the one where you can book a table for bottle service?
Tableless.
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 They're doing very well,
They're doing
considering where they are.
Yeah. And so, for me, it's not necessarily the amount of investment, but really the traction and success that these companies are seeing. And we're seeing a lot of that.
So I have something to add to that. In terms of pure VC dollars, so Silicon Valley's by far number one. But in terms of, and this is something that has been lost in the last few years, is that if you're looking at VC-based deals, Boston is a secure number 2. New York is number 3. Because we're talking about consumer ad tech, but you're not looking at pharma, you're not looking at biotech, you're not looking at all this other all these other sectors that make the Boston area great.
Sure.
So consumer ad tech, yes, they're laggards, and that's a function of the people behind the funds, where they've been kind of behind the 8 ball to really think about what's a consumer opportunity.
Dude, I disagree with you. Half of the Boston investors think should be fired, the other half should be shot. Let's be real.
All right, I was a little bit more PC than that, but
It's absolutely not true.
Is this because your investors are coming out of Dallas, or?
No, I have investors in Boston too, actually.
Okay.
It's just that, like you have problems with Boston is like this. You either have, like, the best investors are either core entrepreneurs who started companies and know how to build companies, know their shit, or they're subject matter experts, so they'll know a particular industry really, really well, right? And so, like, the bio guys here, they know the bio industry really, really well. Fortunately, I'm not in this industry, or fortunately, right? So, and other than that, the players here who are playing in the scene, the tech scene, are either they have been part of the tech scene that is no longer relevant today, like back in like the Apple days, and the only company they probably did not invest in is Apple. And the other ones are just financial guys who are just like, I was born to a rich family, I went to HBS, I'm an investor, I know what I'm doing. So like those are basically the two types of investors, and good luck.
I mean, I would agree that biotech is really strong here, that ad tech, that consumer-facing products, et cetera, really lags behind.
Well, certainly
lots of other
consumer-facing brands. I think Drizly was the last deal in how many months in terms of being consumer-facing. So it kind of tells you, in terms of Boston, how behind the 8 ball they are.
Secure funding, I feel like we had Wayfair as a big darling.
Maybe
How
springtime.
long did the company exist before they secured funding?
That's a good question as well.
So
Because it would have lasted about a week in Silicon Valley, but here it took
the company's been around for
a year.
a good 18 months before funding.
Before funding.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
That's horrible.
But to your point, it took these operators that were successful, that made some coins, made some bank.
When did you guys launch the app? Just for the record?
What, 2013? Like first quarter 2013 or something like that?
Yeah, so I'd say we've been open outside of beta for about a year, but before that we were running kind of testing out of one store. So it was very limited.
Only in the Boston market, just to clarify.
Yeah, only in the Boston
How
market.
many months after the
So
fundraise did you launch?
I actually think
after what?
After the fundraise, how many months did you launch the app?
So
we did 2 rounds of seed funding, so it depends. Most of us was in May. I don't remember.
So one of the conversations, and I've been having a lot of conversations with VCs about our incubator and what companies need, and one of the conclusions I've come to, and this is why we started the incubator, is that primarily companies, especially companies doing mobile, don't need money. That the money that investors are typically looking to put in, which tends to be millions of dollars for seed A, it used to be much smaller, that you can get a seed round for $500,000. The typical startup that's looking to do mobile needs great product, significantly more than they need $9–10 million. You see companies like Uber closing, $500 million, something. Again, this is stuff that is really makes their cap table make sense. This isn't necessarily operating spending that they need this money to grow the company.
User acquisition, I mean.
No, they're not, that money is really just so that whoever the investor is in that round can get 15 to 20% of a company that's valued at whatever they were valued at. This is not they go and they spend that $500 million. This is literally to make the cap table.
And there is kind of a glut of capital. I mean, I'm not.
Well, that's why I say that.
So are you saying you can start a company very capital efficiently these days?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, mobile is way much more. And we get this all the time. Hey, can you build us a competitor to XYZ company? And absolutely you can, and the key thing to differentiate is no longer technology, it's about greatness of product. And this is why it's an amazing time to build mobile apps and mobile technologies, because you can really be competitive with companies that have billion-dollar valuations.
I love Greg, and I'm going to actually really disagree with him.
That's fair.
I think that the market has changed. Like, I think 5 years ago when you were building an app, I built apps 5 years ago, you built apps 5 years ago, you could start really capital efficiently. I think today, capital efficiently doesn't cut it. Why? Because you're competing with Greg, who can pay $160,000, $180,000 salaries to his developers, which your startup can compete with. You're competing with people who pay UX designers $200 an hour. Why? Because there's 2.5 of them in Boston, and they can charge that. right? You're
I
competing.
I
So-
still think that's, I mean, in terms of what
Yeah.
it costs to start a startup, that, the barriers to building software and.
It's not you can,
I mean, but
building
Greg,
an
you're-
app and like
you're-
visually releasing it out there and that's it.
Well, you're
It's not
talking
like
about
building
app
and,
discovery,
like-
which is a shitty experience.
No, I'm talking about building a company, right? You're building a company like even Drizly, right? It took you guys 18 months to raise funding, then it took you guys months after to release an app. Like, how expensive it is to release the Drizly app? Like, you can build it in a month. Actually, if you got pissed, you could build it in like a week. I mean, let's be real. But
It takes a little bit longer to build an app, but.
I think.
So our barriers to entry are pretty high now. Thank you very much. But anyway, that's besides the point.
No, the thing is that the things.
So nobody go home and make Drizly is the point. Like, you can't get into alcohol delivery.
You could try, but you're gonna fail.
Because you can't afford this guy on your payroll. So.
The things that make Drizly harder to compete with are the things that they've been able to get traction on, and this includes the relationships and some of the back-end pieces that I don't know the guy at Heineken to call to get some of the deals in place that they've already spent the legwork of 18 months to go do. To reproduce that takes time. That being said, if I wanted to build an app to deliver coconut water or to deliver maple water or other products and there was a market for that, the barrier to entry to that is not millions of dollars. You can actually be fairly capital efficient in terms of building that. So the VC number for me, and like, who cares? Like, to some extent, really, it doesn't make a difference to me because I don't look in the rearview mirror like, hey, how many deals got closed by Sequoia Capital? It's like, who really cares? Let's build our own cool apps, great products, build a culture around great technology, great startups, great mobile. And then I don't care if they close 100 as long as the ones that we build are great.
Not because I have to and I have to be tactful, but I'm going to agree with both of you.
Which one?
Because with Greg and Ellie, because, I mean, today it's cheaper than ever to start something. Like, you can go home in your mom's basement and do it. And if you're looking at a 12, 15-year horizon, yeah, it's cheaper than ever. But Ellie's absolutely right that the cost of talent acquisition is more expensive than ever. I was at a thing at, what were the stats? I hate to bring Daniel into this, but there were some stats at a thing. We were at a thing at HBS for VCPE, and they were talking about, go ahead. Not dry powder, no. Well, there is a lot of dry powder, sure, and that's why these big dollars are coming into these apps. But, it was more about the cost of talent anymore is so high that, a few years ago, $100,000 a year would buy you the best minds in the business. And today, to compete for those 2.5 UX designers in Boston, like, they name their own price. And so it is more expensive, but it's cheaper. What they said was, the servers are cheaper, access to technology. Anybody can launch something on AWS. Like, it's done, from home. But the talent is very expensive.
These days. I mean, just go to Grace. See how much he charges you to build an app.
Again, this is the difference. And this is the difference between a startup and coming to a company. Like, we don't take equity from the companies that come to us.
That was going to be a question of mine, actually.
We generally don't take. We have taken minority equity stakes, but we generally don't. And this is the difference between being in a startup. That if you are a founder, a co-founder, you may have a UX guy, you may have a developer. You're sharing a larger equity pool to build that company, especially pre-investment. Even when you get angel round, you have a bigger stake in that thing. When you are getting capital and you're hiring someone else, yeah, they expect a salary. And so this is the balance between I expect to be compensated by full salary, or I expect to understand that I'm taking life risk and monetary risk, and I expect to be compensated by equity. So I think that's something that's true of any startup company. They have to balance those risks. And there are individuals, whether they're hotshot iOS developers or UX designers, who are at a stage of their life where they're willing to or interested in taking a higher risk profile of being at a startup and with a lower salary. I mean, I bootstrapped my company. This is how we started. I couldn't afford high-end developers, but I was like, this is the company that we're going to build, and this is what it's going to be about. And I understand you're taking a smaller salary, but these are the pros and cons, and join me on this adventure. And I think that notion of going on an adventure in a startup and starting something, you can make those trade-offs. And again, it's not going to be right for everybody, but it's right for some people, and that's all you need.
All right, to that effect, my last question for all of you is, let's presuppose that I'm really talented, wicked talented, and I've got the UX piece, and
All right, cut him
you
off.
know, I know how to code an app, and I'm doing it right now, and I'm working on, you know, tinkering on this, that, and the other. Should I be a gun for hire, as Raiz Labs is today? Should I try to build my own portfolio of products and apps like Ellie did 5 years ago? And I was talking with Ellie, I don't know, a couple months ago. This guy was churning out all kinds of crazy shit. I mean, you know, apps that would do whatever, and was making killer amounts of money doing it. He may counter that, but you know. So you know, I mean, the question is, I've got this talent. Am I a consultant? Am I going at my own and building a portfolio, or am I going to the careers section of Apptopia or Raiz Labs and looking for a job at a larger organization?
So let me answer that, because I have this conversation with developers all the time. And the real answer to that is, what are you passionate about? And I see a lot of developers who, they love variety, they love solving new problems, new challenges, and they don't like the idea that they're going to be in one thing for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And those people who love variety, they love new challenges, they love new technologies, they could be a great fit for a company like Raiz Labs. There are other people who I talk to who they love a particular idea. They may have this idea for a medical company, they may love education, they may love beverage delivery, they may love, you know, this interchange of data, they may have an analytics itch, and they love this idea of a product. And so we've had people who decide that their passion is actually around a product or a technology, whether it's a company like Runkeeper or a fitness company like Fitbit or something else, and they say, I want that product, I want to work, that's my passion. And there are other people who say, I love the fact that there's a new challenge every 3 months, every 5 months, whatever that is, and they love being able to go into Xcode and hit project new and start with a clean slate and do something new. So it's really, you know, I don't ever sell or say, like, come join my company. I'm like, I don't know, like, you're a talented iOS developer or UX designer.
I'm
what
not,
do you really,
so.
what do you enjoy?
What are you really passionate about?
Yeah, what's your passion, right?
I'm really
look at this
passionate about
number.
outsourcing that.
Just look at this number and then decide what are you passionate
Right,
about.
exactly.
You know?
Did we mention the salaries for UX
Just
designers?
take a look at this.
But at the end of the day, going back to passion, look, because it's capital efficient to, you know, build an app. Let's say, so let's say your passion are kittens. You could build an app that just aggregates all the kitten pictures out there, right? And that could be a very lifestyle business. And
Sure.
maybe you could get, you know, advertising from
Some kind of AdWords
Purina
revenue
or whatever
going on,
from
yeah,
that. But that could be a very
Or
easy
AdSense rather, AdSense
lifestyle
rather.
business, right? So that, and you can make, you know, a good amount of money, probably 20, 30K if you're doing it well, if you get good traffic from these advertisers, then that could be a very healthy lifestyle business. But then from a lifestyle business, if you want to move to enterprise, that takes a whole other kind of stepping stone, right?
You just empowered a room full of kitten app developers at home. So
there's a lot of there's a lot of stupid apps making a lot of money out there. They just need the audience.
I have a friend who's an amazing iOS developer, but his passion is skiing, and he loves to ski way more than he loves iOS development. And you know, we had this conversation over several beers, and I said, you know, come join me, come build apps, we'll do awesome stuff. He's like, Greg, I love your company, I love what you do, but I love skiing more. And for him, he moved up to the mountains and he gets to ski all day, and he has season passes, and he'll come home at night and he'll write some code and he'll do some consulting projects to pay the bills. But you know, I think
He also lives alone. He's not married either.
no, he's
Growing a long beard and
He's actually-
mailing bombs to people.
He's married. He has 2 kids, and you know, he makes a living. But he's following his passion. And I think Scott Adams, who's the author of Dilbert, he has a fascinating post on is passion bullshit, and he kind of talks through this notion of, is passion a proxy for success, that people are successful and then they're like, oh, I'm successful, therefore I'm passionate, and then it kind of fuels this. And I don't think that's quite right. Like, I think there is some amount of the things that personally interest you regardless of monetary value, and there's the things that you need to do for monetary value. And it is not 100% of one or 100% of the other. You have to kind of balance the things, because if you're truly passionate, and he would ski all day, But at the end of the day, he's like, okay, I have to pay the bills, and he actually enjoys some of the programming. So it's finding that balance where you're enjoying the majority of the things that you're doing. My creative director has a phrase which I really like. He's like, I like to come to play. I don't go to work, because he enjoys playing with design and UX and visuals. And I think my advice to anyone who's trying to figure out whether they should start a startup or whether they should build their own app or whether they should figure out some other thing is just make sure that balance is more than 50% to the thing that you actually enjoy, and then, follow that.
All right, so we're running long this evening, in part because of the weather, in part because the conversation's great. I want to open the floor to questions. We're only going to have time for a couple. If I cut you short, after this we send out a Survey Monkey to everyone who came here. Please don't leave nasty reviews in the Survey Monkey because you didn't get to ask your question. Just grab a drink and talk with these guys after the fact. So does anyone have any, that's happened by the way before a couple months ago. Somebody was like, I didn't get to ask my questions. This is the last time I come to Startup Stir. They'll be back. The vodka always brings them back. So first question right over here.
I do. For the apps, a lot of the folks I'm talking to who are developing apps are telling me that the data that they produce, and this may be a little bit more towards Drizly, but I think it applies to all of you, the data that they produce that they can go back to the producer, say Heineken, is actually more valuable than the consumer end, which is selling to the consumer. And there's part of me that feels that much more of the app process is going towards data, that we're actually mining some data in giving the service to the customer, to the consumer. What is more valuable, since you seem to have 3 revenues, as they said? Is the data more valuable than selling to the consumer?
I think so at this point. I mean, at the end of the day, a brand like Heineken or Absolute, they basically have their distributions. They basically can move product. They know that if they turn this lever, they move X much more percentage of product. So they're seeing us as a way to get millennials, right? To kind of get their product and communicate to our audience. So in terms of the volume that we'll move for them, is probably at the end of the day barely going to move the needle, but the data is important in terms of, because from a regulatory perspective, they don't have that view, right? So because they don't have that view from a regulatory perspective, they're also going to pay a premium for it, right? So the data is valuable to them.
I would say it depends on the business model, and we've seen lots of different companies that have different business models. So we built appsforcare.com, and they have a subscription business model for their service, and the analytics is certainly helpful for their core business, but the core revenue that they get from the customer is significantly more than the analytics that they learn about those things. The analytics really serve to how do you retain and how do you maintain those customers. Certain businesses that are lower margin, the data may be more valuable. So it really depends on what that break even is of, is it a high margin business or a low margin business? So something like Amazon may be different than a Dropbox. Something like Google, and Google's core services of search or maps. You download the Google Maps app. That's a great example where they're providing a service, they're routing directions, they're doing all sorts of stuff. It's a free app. I'm like, how does Google make any money? Well, they must be collecting a bunch of data
Sponsored listings.
Yeah.
They have sponsored listings.
Well, but the sponsored listings are only valuable because they know who is within that proximity and how they can actually drive traffic and flow through those things.
I'm gonna also
it
answer
depends
this
on the
question.
business.
I'm not going to be as eloquent as Greg.
It's okay.
or as, that's what he said. But I'll tell you, I'm trying to filter. I'm actively trying to filter. No, I'll tell you the truth. If you're 99% of the time, your data is useless. Absolutely fucking useless. Not worth a penny. Why? Because everybody else is also collecting the same data. Okay, and it doesn't make any difference. If your primary
You're a data company.
I'm a data company.
Man.
My data is not useless.
How much is your data worth?
So you're the 1%. Is what
No,
you're saying.
exactly. No, I'm definitely, I'm not gonna hide behind anything yet. But what it is, if you're basing your monetization strategy on data, if you come to me and you tell me, Ellie, we have this great thing, we have no way of making money, but we're going to have all this interesting data, I'm going to tell you that all this interesting data is not that interesting.
It's cliche,
anymore.
I will say that.
Wait,
We hear a lot of big data.
Data cannot live on its own. Data has to be actionable, right? Data has to turn into insights that then turn into actionable kind of strategies and tactics, right? So data on its own is shit.
It's amazing. You just wrote my homepage.
Right? So, I'm not for hire, by the way. I'm still employed by Drizly. But again, data is data. Data has to be turned into insights that have to kind of inform a strategy that can lead into tactics. That's what data. That's the importance
I've never
of data.
seen an app that the data is so valuable that it's a standalone business where it actually there is no example like this in the market that it's so valuable that this app makes sense and makes financial sense because of the data.
Which is why you need Apptopia to aggregate all that data together and make it valuable
I'll make
data.
you useless because I'm gonna sell your data without you giving me your data, and then I will just give that data to everybody else without needing you. So.
All right, so we have time for one more. We have time for one more question, and then we're gonna wrap up.
So we're with a fitness app startup, and I keep hearing about user acquisition costs and all that. I guess, Ali, my question is mostly for you. Do you see any systems that work? Because it keeps being like surprisingly high numbers for user acquisition per user. Do you see any systems where like a referral-based system actually works, or like the users of the apps getting friends of theirs to use it too?
Can I interject real quick? What's the name of the app? I remember you guys.
It is Fitus.
Fitus, right? Yep, I remember now. They said earlier, they were like, "Hey, we met you last month." I was like, "I don't know, man." Like, exactly. When you said fitness app, of course, I'm with you. All right.
So I don't know what you mean by referral. You mean like the Dropbox model, like you share, you get 25, you get whatever megabytes free?
I mean, kind of, but if we're going to gyms and we're trying to get their users to use it, and it's an app to help coordinate people going to the gym with other people. What does that do to when we're trying to figure out our revenue model and how much we need to plan to spend on user acquisition? How do we, are there good examples of things where referral systems work, or does it really not work, or?
Well, I don't know what your monetization model is.
We don't either.
Oh. Okay. Well, like referral systems don't work on mobile. People are, unless you're sending chat messages, unless you're messaging people like Snapchat and things like that, where you're like, it's inherently like you have to actually share it with at least one person or multiple people, then it doesn't really work. There are hacks though. A lot of apps have been successful with hacking, and so I will tell you a couple of hacks just so you get like a taste of it. But I don't think if you guys haven't figured out a monetization model, you'll only figure it out once you get like to a certain critical mass where you can experiment and run a couple of different tests. I'm already thinking of a couple of different models, but I'm sure nothing you guys haven't thought of. Today, I think the only thing that hasn't been patched yet is the phone book, and so that's where the real opportunity lies. So, is this recording, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Can we turn this off for 30 seconds?
No, this goes to
Literally.
this.
Okay, fine, fuck it, whatever.
We currently have about 70 followers on YouTube, so all 70 of them will.
So technically what you could do, you have to check the laws and regulations in your state.
Wait a minute, I have this on record.
What you could do is you could ask the user to go through, a couple of screens to basically say, hey, we need access to your phone book for whatever reason, like, hey, share this with your friend, and you get to use the app for free, or something, or whatever it may be, right? The same way we used to get users to share their location with us by saying, hey, we want to connect you to the nearest server, right? Things like that, even though we only had one server. But, so basically you get them to share their phone book, and then you use like Twilio to spoof their number, message blast all their friends saying, hey, your friend just signed up, he sent you this link to download this app, and you just blast all their friends, and your cost to do that is literally pennies, and if you do it on a massive scale, it's less than pennies per message.
So per violation, TCPA is $10,000. Please don't do that.
So I'm gonna interject with ethics.
So extensively elite.
So I want to answer the question a little differently, and I think you can do lots of things, whether you're doing that or something else. That there are ways to acquire users, but the real thing that you want to acquire is people who are passionate and love your product. And in terms of true success, and again, I think there's short-term success and long-term success. And long-term, if your product has virality, it will only have natural virality if people love it, for whatever reason. I think you can also bake in a viral component of why someone should interact with someone else with your app. So I don't know your particular fitness app, but there are lots of apps that we've worked on where there's a natural social component. And when I say natural, this is not a...
You have to give an example of a natural social component.
I will use a natural social component. So people are familiar with Venmo, which is... So there's a natural social component where there's a natural point where you want to give someone money and you want to get some money from someone. And Square Cash is another example where, again, the social sharing is built into the foundation and the fabric of how the app is worked. Snapchat, Facebook. It doesn't have to be a messaging product. And I would
Venmo is a messaging product. You just message cash. It's like
well,
Snap Cash.
But that's fine. And I would use fitness. And there are people who go to the gym with a friend. That's not unusual. There are people who challenge each other. Let's lose 10 pounds together. Let's do certain natural.
It's a cold start problem, right? Because if I open his app, I find no gym buddies over there. This app is fucking useless. It gets deleted. Actually, most apps get deleted within the first 3 seconds after downloading them. You open it, it sucks, you close it, you delete it.
I'm not saying it's an easy problem. I'm saying that there are things that are ethical that don't scrape the entire address book.
Greg, he's looking to get users to fix the cold start problem. Come on.
All right, so my takeaway from it is the real moral of the story is...
Use your own moral compass. That's the moral of the story.
Either raise a lot of money and be able to hire one of these guys to work for you, or just start doing it and see what you come up with and test and reiterate, like the advice is given to all startups: fail early and fail often. So with that, I think that we're about to give away a $1,000 prize.
I haven't selected yet. We don't know yet.
Okay, we're still tabulating here.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
So regarding like starting apps and kind of getting an idea, you got a couple bucks in the bank, and there's these things like Elance and like people all around the world. Are they people that we should like? Is that a good starting point, or is it better off going to like MIT and looking for the next like best iOS developer?
No,
like, hey man, do you wanna
absolutely.
come on,
Outsource for sure.
He's just trying to upset Greg, really. Is
No,
what's going on.
I think
I
there are.
don't know where the starting point really.
So the question was, just in case anyone didn't hear it, and also for the purposes of the 70 followers on YouTube, you've got a couple bucks in the bank. We're gonna define a couple bucks as $5,000 to $10,000, and you know, you've got a really damn good idea where you're gonna go with it. You're gonna go to Elance, Odesk, India, China. How can you get started, or am I supposed to just sort of hang around at MIT and hope that like the right iOS guy trips on my shoes?
So
I have an
There's-
opinion on that.
there's a wide range of both individuals and companies that you can hire to do this, from companies that will build an app for a couple grand to companies that will be significantly more than that. I think ultimately you need to decide what are the values that you have for your company, and sometimes it's I need a proof of concept, sometimes it's I need traction, sometimes I need quality, sometimes I need high level success, sometimes it's I need to pitch something to a VC. But I have nothing negative to say about Odesk or some of these lower cost services. Companies that come to us with a significantly smaller budget, we often refer them to a website called theymakeapps.com, which lists a number of global developer shops that are a little bit smaller that will take on smaller budget projects. And again, I can't vouch for their quality of work, but there are kind of developers in a wide range of stuff. I would caution offshore companies because I've seen lots of disaster projects. So, vet the companies that you're working with, regardless of if they're high end or low end. Just make sure you know what you're getting, what the expectations are, because whatever amount you spend, whether you're spending this or this, you want to make sure you're going to get a great product at the end.
I'm going to weigh in on this as well and say that I started outsourcing to India in 2000 when I was running a web design firm. And along the lines of fail early and fail often and running a lean startup is establish a minimum viable product at a relatively low cost. And I've had nothing, obviously my experience is anecdotal and personal, but I've had nothing but fantastic experiences from outsourcing to offshore providers. And, honestly, I ran a business doing nothing more than sitting in the middle of that transaction, selling my web design products for $5,000, $10,000, adding some value, and outsourcing it for $200 to $500. And I got great work, you know, for the money that I was spending. The app world, a little more, you know, emerging, a little more complex. You get what you pay for in anything, but I think it's a great place to start if you have clearly defined specifications to educate yourself about your needs and spec it out in a really detailed fashion and turn to the internet to see what you come up with and hire carefully. Anybody else want to weigh in, or should we wrap? Do we have a winner?
Well, so we were down to our last two, so we need a tiebreaker. Is that
Okay,
all
all right.
And we're going to let the crowd choose. And if the two folks that are down to last two is Aaron Odman and Amitav Kandela. Sorry if I butchered your name. Is the other guy here? Is Aaron here?
Can you not read? Don't read their tweets. I want to hear what they said.
All right.
But don't identify the name.
Oh, all right.
It goes to the better content.
Fine, fine. So based on the content, the crowd will choose. So the first tweet says, at Coalition Boston, #StartupStir, the best tweet, select this one.
It's feeling a little shameless to me. I don't know.
The second one was mobile app monetization, pizza, vodka, hard to beat StartupStir at Coalition Boston.
I'm going with that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So who wants the first one?
No one.
Who wants the second one?
Woo!
Well, you know who you are.
Were there only 2 tweets? Like.
No. There were.
They
were
narrowed
a big
it
number,
down
but
from
we did a little vote.
From the hundreds of tweets that were at
Divided
#StartupStir.
by 10. Thank you guys. Yeah.
So anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our panelists. We have a little gift for each of you, compliments of Drizly. Next month we're having a startup stir on women in entrepreneurship. Hey, thank you very much. Drizly.
Drizly, your alcohol. That was good.